Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me tonight on another episode of Spanning the Need. As you can tell, we're in another location, a new location, I should say. So,
I like it.
Well, nice studio, I should say.
Yeah.
Today's episode, we'll talk to Dr. Adam Earnhardt, professor in the Department of Communication at Youngstown State University, about life, social, and media communication. How you doing tonight, Adam?
Good. I kind of expected like some intro music, like Monday Night Football, or da 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 da.
Well, you really can't have intro like that because, okay, you know what? Let's have an honest chat right now.
Come on, Spanning the Need. You need some production
value. Before we start getting into life and everything like that. So tonight the Browns play, not your terrible Steelers, as your towel says, terrible.
My 1-0 Steelers, right?
Your 1-0 Steelers, and hey, it's still the road to the Super Bowl. So I ain't worried about that. But we're not here to talk about sports yet. But we'll be here to talk about it later in this episode. Yeah. So, Adam, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate your time. I know you guys got a lot going on at Youngstown State University and some other things going on. So everyone, just so you're aware, I'm wearing the Browns because the Browns play in about an hour. So we're still having it and we're still doing what we do. So, Adam, you've been probably at the university for over 20 years, and you've kind of come from different locations. So talk about where you started and how you come to where you are now.
Yeah, well, I've been here this is my 16th year, but I had 10 years in higher ed before I came to Youngstown. I was at, if we want to go all the way back, I actually got my start at University of Pittsburgh at Bradford, the Bradford campus up there on the border of Pennsylvania and New York. So I was there for a few months, and then I moved to Clarion University. I was at Clarion University. I was there for 10 years. I worked in admissions, and then I became their first webmaster. I became the first webmaster and e-marketing director. It was a title that when they had submitted the title to the state in the job description, because Clarion is a state university. The state initially rejected it because they had never heard of it before. So I did that for, I was there for about 10 years, all the while, and this is hard for some people to believe, but I was actually driving from Clarion, Pennsylvania, all the way to Kent, Ohio, about 3 times a week. To work on my PhD. So I did that for about 6 years. And some semesters I didn't have as much to do. I worked on my dissertation from a distance, but what was crazy about that is there was one exit I was driving by every single time, and that was the Belmont Avenue exit off of Interstate 80. And don't you know it? I live 2 minutes from that exit now. So I left Clarion in 2005, and came here. I came here initially. I was hired to teach and create a program in what was called computer mediated communication. So that was meant to be a track just in computer communication. One of the very first classes that I taught here was a research class. And I remember that fall of 2005, walking into the classroom, and students were sitting up in the front of the classroom, just, giggling and gaggling around. And they were, and they said, "Oh, Dr. Earnhardt, you got to check out this new thing. It's called Facebook." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, okay, Facebook, great. That's a clever name. What can be better than MySpace? But sure, I'll check it out."
Which faltered very fast.
Wow, right? So Facebook went and MySpace went, But yeah, that was, I didn't know at the time, but that was the birth of social media. We were calling it Web 2.0 at the time. So that quickly morphed for me professionally into a whole new line of research and investigation that I had never even considered before. So I was very happy about my move to Youngstown. My wife and I moved our family here. My wife also teaches for Youngstown State. She was the former director of the Anderson program in journalism. Yeah, we're both very happy here.
Well, and I think that brings a good point is both of you actually teach in the communications department at Youngstown State.
Yeah.
And you were the chair for years until this past year.
Yeah.
So what's it like to teach in a higher ed atmosphere where you start out, you're there decades, and then all of a sudden you see students come back to say, hey, thank you, reach out to you, you see them grow.
Yeah.
How does that feel when you see that?
Makes me feel old. Well, I mean, honestly, I just said to Mary Beth the other night, I think I was scrolling my Instagram feed or something. I don't know what it was, but I think there might have been 3 or 4 pictures in a row. I'm like, oh, there's Emily, she's having a baby. There's Sierra, she's having a baby. There's Russ, he's having a baby. So that all of my former students, and these were students that were my students just 5 or 6 years ago. Are having kids of their own, and some of their kids. I knew this day would come because if you talk to former professors, they are now professors of the teaching the kids of the kids. So they're teaching the sons and daughters of their former students, which is that makes you feel old. But no, on top of all that, it makes me feel incredibly proud. I mean, especially for me, seeing some of these former students, the Rupert sisters, for example, they're a really good example. Colin Chupa and Kelsey Klim, these twins, they used to be really big down in the Covelli Center and working with JAC, but they have started their own company. They branched out and started their own company. I think it's just amazing to see them grow, and all of my former students grow into these professionals that I was like, well, I knew you when, and to see them mature and really do some amazing things. So yeah, it makes you feel old, but at the same time makes you feel really proud.
Well, it's the notion that when you see them coming back to visit your class or even give a presentation in your class, we talk about that communication that, hey, they're coming back to give back to their alma mater. They're coming back to just visit on alumni weekend or some other things. And you've probably seen a lot of people grow in positions and been in contact with them.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is that we're in a unique situation here at Youngstown where I like to say our traditional student is not traditional. The tradition, when you think of a college age student, a traditional college age student, you think 18 to 24, and that's really not the case here. I mean, we have so many students who are returning adults, people that are in their 40s and 50s who are coming back either to get to start their degree or to finish their degree or get a second degree. So when I started teaching here, I remember being in a classroom where 5 of my students were, 20, 30 years older than me. Sad to say, I actually have been to the funeral of 2 of my older students. I know it's sad to say, but they were successful. They finished their degrees here. They were successful. They went on, for I think the one who died recently went into the restaurant business and was really successful there. So I mean, even those stories. So you kind of see we talk about this idea of education being cradle to grave. That epitomizes it right there. Whenever you can watch somebody kind of grow, and then you get them as a student whenever they're older, it's pretty cool.
Well, I think the one thing is it's like we were talking off camera. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm back in school getting a master's degree 20 some years later.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where sometimes you see the exact same people that like you never left.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Or you see different iterations of them. It's like the second.
You got taller.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is we talk about communication, but we talk about what you've accomplished. Okay, as the chair, you've also done community service work. You back in 2000, back in the early 2000s, early 2000 teens, you were awarded the 40 under 40, and you were
Yeah.
one of the top 5 MVPs in the community. And that was
cool.
when, and that award was coming out at that time, and it honors what you do in the community. And I think people don't realize what you do in the community. Yes, you do teach at Youngstown State University, like other people, but there are specific people that really go above and beyond in the community, like you did.
Yeah, I actually love doing that stuff. It drives my wife crazy because I might be gone, late at night sometimes. Well, not now, not for the last 6 months, but late at night at meetings or events.
You were gone the last 6 months and late at night.
Yeah, well, I haven't been, but if I were gone, I mean, the last 6 months, I mean, everything has been shut down. All of my meetings for the community organizations that I'm involved with have all been, Zoom meetings, GoToMeeting, WebEx, stuff like this, But no, one of the ones that I'm really proud of right now is the work that we're doing with Shepherd of the Valley. So I'm vice president of the board at Shepherd, and we opened our new Liberty campus up in Liberty, it's
Right off
north of
Tibbetts Wick.
Say again?
Right off Tibbetts Wick.
Yes, yeah.
It's a massive facility.
It's like a little Taj Mahal, man. It is gorgeous. And we did some tours, and we were obviously wore all the protective gear and did something. But what was crazy about opening that facility was, and this just goes to show you how amazing these people are that work for Shepherd. They moved. Okay, so we were closing down the Niles facility and opening the Liberty facility in the same day.
Ooh.
So we had to move all of the residents from Niles to Liberty, and which isn't that far of a drive, but when you talk about coordinating that entire move, those
patients,
people,
equipment,
yeah,
you name it.
I mean, it was just amazing how efficient that was, and I had nothing to do with it, other than I got to sit there and be a cheerleader, which is sometimes all board members really have to do. But
well, yeah. and that brings me to a thing that from what you've done in the community, you actually, if no one knows, Adam played in a charity basketball game about 10 years ago.
I left it all on the court, Tony.
He left it all on the court. And just for everyone's enjoyment.
Oh, my goodness.
I thought I would show.
Oh, I like your wallpaper.
I think I would show Adam.
Oh, wait a minute. I got to get a little bit closer. Look how fat I am. I must have been, I bet you I was 300. Well, let's see. I bet you I was 320 pounds there.
But you're also 6'9".
Well, yeah, that helps.
So,
and look at those
in
kicks,
this one,
too, man.
And here's a couple pics. There's one going for the layup, and you can see how tall he is. And I think that's Allison. No, that's Joe,
Jay Williams. Is that Jay Williams?
That's Jay Williams. Yeah, Jay Williams. There was also Congressman Ryan.
Oh yeah,
Joe Schiavone. So a variety of them. And then here's you dribbling up the ball up the court.
Oh yeah, Joe still gives me crap about this too.
Well, and I think it's all, but you give your time, and I think that's the thing that people don't understand is you give your time to the community, and I think that's the nice thing.
Well, there's a big reason why too, though. I mean, okay, so let me back up just a little bit, because one of the things that I mentioned was my wife and I moved to Youngstown, and I kid you not, and I know this sounds awful, but one of the questions we get is, well, why'd you move to Youngstown? Why'd you move to Liberty? I'm like, are you kidding me? We love it here. We sought out this place. We wanted to move here. And one of the reasons why is we wanted to raise a family here. We did not want to, and this is not a knock against Clarion, Pennsylvania. This is not a knock to schools that are in rural communities, but we wanted to raise our children in a world, in a place that looked like their world, right? And what I mean by that is not a homogeneous environment, but heterogeneous in terms of race and ethnicity. And so we looked at school districts. It was like every family does when they're moving. We didn't necessarily look at report cards, but we looked at the diversity of that district. And quite frankly, you won't find a more diverse district in and around Youngstown than Liberty. I mean, there are a few, but that size and that diverse has really attracted us. And so for our kids, we wanted them to be in that environment. We also want our kids to see that we are active in the community. My kids know that, for example, my kids know that I'm doing this tonight. Our kids know that we're, that we work at food pantries once in a while. They know that. Actually, it was funny when they were building the Shepherd of the Valley building. We used to drive by there to take our kids to dance class, and every night we would drive by there. My youngest, my son Ozzy, would say, "Oh, there's Daddy's building. There's Daddy's building," which it was only because I talked about it all the time. But it was that idea of trying to get them excited about their community, and so we try to take them to community events and all that. And it's this idea of trying to make our kids as well-rounded as we can in understanding the world that they're going to grow up in.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about that. We talked off camera a little bit about, and we talked on here about social media and how social media has changed over the last decade.
Yeah.
How has communication changed from where it was 10 years ago to where it is now?
Well, I used to say this thing to my students about how no one ever taught us to be mass communicators. I mean, unless you're in the discipline of mass communication, of media, and we really don't get that until we get to college. I mean, you might have been involved with your school newspaper, school TV station, radio station, whatever. No one really gets to fully understand or appreciate the power of mass communication unless you're in that discipline, or unless you're practicing, you're a practicing mass communicator, right? Well, what happened in 2005 with Facebook, and you can even go back before that. I mean, all of a sudden, we had this switch go off where we were all of a sudden given the power to be mass communicators. All of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No one taught us to do that. I mean, people taught you how to say "mama," "dada." People taught you how to answer the phone. People taught you how to write a letter.
Still waiting for people how to answer a phone.
Well, that's true too, and I don't even know that people know how. Some people don't know how to answer a phone anymore. I mean,
I don't even think I remember little things about, hey, this is a phone. What? It's not it's a landline. So what's it do? And not many people knew how to. The old rotary phones.
Oh yeah, the first time my kid saw a rotary phone, his head exploded. Like he had no idea. But that's what it is. I mean, I think that has been the biggest change, is that there was the speed to adopt, the speed of adoption. The adoption for social media was it like, I think it was somebody said 1,200% speed wise what TV was in terms of adopting the technology, right? And why? Because we all had it. It was readily accessible. We all had computers or had access to computers. So the speed of adoption was, and the rate of adoption was very, very high for social media. That said, no one was teaching us. Now, 15 years later, you could argue that people have become more adept at it, but because no one was teaching them how to use it, we had a lot of hurdles. We had a lot of stumbling blocks along the way. And I think you saw that, in 2015 and 2016 with the election. I think you saw that with people who are giving up so much personal information, people who are just willingly, sharing content with other people, thinking that it's safe and secure, or not caring whether or not it's safe or secure. And I think, people are becoming a little bit more wise about that, more attuned to it. And it will eventually make us better mass communicators.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about that in 15 and 16 now. There is a big emphasis right now on, they call it misinformation or fake news in communication.
Right.
How do you define that, and how should it be approached?
Well, I think fake news is sometimes in the eye of the beholder, unfortunately, but and I'll get to what I mean by that in a second. But when I'm defining fake news for a student, it's anything that's purposefully unfactual. So anything that has taken the fact, a known fact or an established fact, and either distorted it or completely changed it. So in other words, if I tell you that the moon, and I don't know that this is accurate, but that the moon is only 10,000 miles away when in fact it's 100,000 miles away, and I put that out purposefully put that out on a blog or a news story or whatever, then that constitutes fake news. And that's the key. The key is doing it willingly and purposefully, right? Well, the problem there is it only takes one person, one entity to write that story, to produce that fake news. Because all it takes is for one person to see that and say, okay, this fits with my belief system. This fits with everything that I understand about the world and what I value, my convictions, my temperaments, my beliefs, but all of this. So it fits with those. So I'm going to share this with everybody else, right? Well, then we know that starts a cycle, that starts the snowball effect. So that fake news then snowballs down the hill until it runs out. It's out of control. And so there's so much fake news out there, not as much now as there was in 2016, let's say. And because actually the social media companies have done a much better job of tamping down on that, but it's still there. And people will still share it. Now, the part that I wanted to get to was the reason why people share it is, and this goes back to a good friend of mine, Lance Holbert. Lance Holbert is a political, he's a communication scholar, but he focuses on political science and political communication. And there's two big things that we can look at here. And one is selection and perception. So we go out of our way to select news outlets that fit our belief system. So, I mean, I can go with the obvious. The obvious is, well, if you're a Republican, you watch Fox. If you're a Democrat, you watch CNN, right? And that's the one that we kind of lean toward. But it's not as clear cut as that. It's not as clean as that. But that's the idea of selecting news outlets that kind of fit your belief system, your core values, and then perception. Even if you perceive a story to be so outlandish that it could possibly be fake, you might share it anyway, even if you know it to be fake, because it solidifies your position. It reaffirms what you already believe. So people will share things even knowing full well that it's fake, because it doesn't matter to them. It just reaffirms what they already believe, and what they already believe about their candidates. If they can get other people to believe it too, or change their mind or change their position, all the better.
Well, and I think that's something to follow. Let me follow up on that. Is what's the role of social media in misinformation in today's society?
Well, I wrote a column. You'll read this in the Vindicator in the Tribune Chronicle this Sunday. But one of the columns that I wrote about, or one of the things I wrote about this week, was how social media has actually kind of upped their game in terms of, again, I mentioned earlier about tamping down on fake news, but actually trying to present really credible platforms and candidate positions to people on their sites. One of the things they've done a really good job at, and Facebook in particular, is sharing voter information, election information with voters. How to get people registered, for example. I saw a thing on, I think it was Instagram the other day that, if you want to be a poll worker, you click on this, it takes you to your state, and it looks at, you can look at opportunities within your state to be a poll worker. That, I don't remember that it being that prominent in 2016. It probably was there, but we were being inundated with so much fake news back then that I think that kind of information was being drowned out. Now,
especially when we're in COVID.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, that's a good point. So now even more so, we're I think, well, and maybe COVID helped with this too, in that we're paying more attention. Maybe we have a little bit more time to pay attention than we did. We're home a little bit more.
We're home a lot more.
We're in front of these things a lot more. Yeah, right. But that idea that I think people are paying more attention, and so if you are paying more attention, I think you spend more time actually analyzing what is true and what is false. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I think you spend more time like really genuinely looking to see what's accurate and what's not. And I don't know if you do this or not, but one of the things I like to do is shut down either shut off news stories or block or mute people that I know for sure are just, spewing hate and fake stuff. We've been trying to teach people. I've been trying to teach people through my column writing and stuff like that to do that. Like, look, if this stuff really bothers you, there's a simple way to get around it, and that is to mute people.
Well, and I think that's a great point, because you see a lot of people on social media accounts, from Twitter to Instagram and even Facebook, that are telling people, hey, if you don't like what I'm saying, you can unfriend me.
Yeah.
And or the vice versa, that, hey, I don't agree with you, but I respect your points. And I think that's what we've gotten away from.
Yeah.
I think that we are more reactive instead of understanding. Does that make sense?
No, it makes complete sense. Yeah.
And I think that when people think that everything almost is true online now.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that, okay, I post something. Well, it doesn't mean it's true, because it comes from any source out there. It could also be skewed to the way that news source is, without putting the real facts in.
Yeah. I agree with that.
How do you?
Go ahead.
Good. No, go ahead.
Well, and I think the other side of this too is that we're getting better at trying to bring people into conversations that we might have otherwise rejected. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're trying to really get a full picture of an issue, right? It used to be, and again, I'm kind of going back to the 2016 election, because that kind of set the benchmark for how much division and hate were actually out there. 2015, 2016, into 2017. But I think now, people are sick of that. People are just fed up with the hate and the division, and that they really want to get to a true center point. And I'm not saying people have to be undecided. I mean, you can be a Democrat or Republican, and you can still do these things, but bringing people into the conversation that might have differing opinions, but are respected, and that you respect them, you respect their opinion. And I think there's more of that that's starting to happen, and that's a good sign.
Do you think there's more misinformation and fake news now, or do you think it was in the last election?
Oh, last election. In part because many of and by the way, the troll farms are still out there, and they're just, one shuts down, another one pops up. I mean, what was the name of the one? I'm trying to think of the name of the one that was in. Oh, it was in Russia. I think it was IAC or something like that. So So that one actually still exists, but when one of these shuts down, another one pops up, or other ones pop up that look like they're legitimate sources, and they're actually not. They're just troll farms. I think one was QAnon was another one that it's not necessarily a troll farm, but they will generate fake content or fake news, or obviously news that supports a particular candidate or a particular position. Yeah.
And I think that's some of the things that I would love to have people change and stand up and say, you know what, we're tired of the fake news, we're tired of the misinformation, but it just doesn't seem that people it just entices them even more to just throb and, hey, look, this is real, blah, blah, this, et cetera, et cetera. But then, I mean, anyone can spin it any way they want. And it's no matter how many sources you have, yes and yes. Now, there are fact checkers out there nowadays. There's Politica. I forget. There's a couple of them. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a couple of them out there that Facebook is using and a variety of other platforms are using.
Snopes is my favorite.
What is it?
SNOPES. Snopes.com is one of my favorite. They are they're kind of like grassroots. They're funded by users, so but they're fact checkers, so and I get a daily report from them on things that were reported and whether or not they're true or false, or so they're kind of false but kind of true. And you sometimes Donald Trump is a good example. So if it's a story about Donald Trump or something that Trump said, they'll tell you whether or not it's true or false or somewhere in the middle.
And do they back it up with information?
Yep, back it up with facts and all that good stuff. Sure.
And I think that's the problem you see is when no matter if it's President Trump or it's Vice President Biden or any of those, they'll say whatever they say, and you have to find out if it's true or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people are trying to get away from and saying, you know what, stop telling us what you want to say. Tell us what you want to do and give us the plan to do it.
I think more people are going to see that they have access to sites like that. They have access to tools like that. Google has a Chrome extension that you can, and I'm not sure the name of it, but you can actually filter out fake news. And what they do is they collect the fake news sites, and they automatically will not post, or they'll there's another one that gives them scores. So, for example, if it's scored a certain way, they won't include it in their filtering system. So if it's scored high, for example, they'll.
So your recommendation on a good fact check site, Snopes.com?
Yeah, Snopes is a good one. Yeah, and I like it because it's like I said, it's kind of grassroots. It's one of those ones where it's crowdfunded. So, I mean, they probably have a decent amount of cash, but I don't think they're struggling, but it's one of the ones that I would actually, if I were giving any money to anybody for this kind of stuff, it would be the Snopes.
Well, I think that turns into the message now of communication during this presidential election.
Yeah.
Okay. How is the mass communication affecting the end users?
I'm sorry, I just saw a question pop up.
If Biden wins, we'll tweet like Trump. Okay, it's an interesting one.
Will he tweet like Trump?
I don't think Biden will tweet.
By the way. Which, by the way, I'm executive director of the Youngstown Press Club too.
See, we'll just stick that up there. If Biden wins, we'll tweet like Trump. So just so everyone can see it.
Posted that. I wonder who's running. I don't know who's running that account right now. But you don't know that? Well, that's another story. I'm relatively new as the executive director, so honestly, you know what I've been focused on the last 2 weeks? Trying to get Tim Ryan to do a debate with Christina Hagan. We've been trying to find a location and a date that Pelosi will let him be and come back to Youngstown to to do a debate with Christina Hagan. So that's what I've been working on. I'm not sure,
how about we just throw that out the door and say, you know what? Let's do it like this. I don't care what you got in front of you or behind you. People want to see it.
But I will tell you though, I like that question because that has come up more often than you might think. I mean, there are a lot of people.
Which question are we referring to?
No. If Biden wins, will he tweet like Trump?
I don't think so. I think Biden's a little bit more reserved.
Yeah.
I think that because if I'm even running for president, and even if I'm tweeting, my tweets are going to be politically correct because, that's different from what Trump does. No,
Trump has no filter.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, and there's a group of people who really appreciate that. And I understand the reason why it's kind of off-putting to a lot of us is that, and not me, I don't really care. I mean, he can do whatever he wants to do. It's not going to affect me.
Yeah.
But this idea that it's off-putting is because it does have the appearance of being unpresidential. Well, that's just because he's trying to redefine it. And the other thing about Trump is that, he hasn't changed. So this is who he is. I mean, he hasn't changed the way he's talked or tweeted or done anything since day one. I mean, this
is who you're going to get for the next term, plain and simple. You vote for him, you get another 4 years, this is what you're going to get. So voters have to make a decision. Is that the way they want to go? Or are they going to vote for their candidate? And then I've heard some people that say, well, I don't know who to vote for. I don't have enough information.
Joe Jorgensen. Joe Jorgensen. You can vote for the Libertarian candidate.
Yeah, there you go. Which you never know what. Hey,
I just heard. I just heard that there's a whole issue surrounding that too, and that with the debate on September 29th, she is going to be in Cleveland, and the thought there is that because there's a hashtag Let Her Speak. That the whole reason why they're not letting her into the debates is because she's a woman, which is not true. But there's that issue of, okay, well, here we have two white men again after we've been through had this like awakening and the Me Too movement, and now you're going to not isolate but like kind of disqualify this other candidate because of the party she's affiliated with, when we could be hearing from a legitimate woman for president.
Well, the other thing about that is, I know in the past, and I have not followed the presidential commission that's been trying. I think there was supposed to be one tomorrow or tonight. Right. I think it was. The president was supposed to be in Cleveland tonight, I think, or it was next Thursday, and they moved it to the very end of September. And what is past precedents? They always did the percentage.
Yeah.
If you didn't have above a certain percentage of likely or liable voters, you were not able to be on there.
Candidate. Yep, you're right. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why a lot of debate organizations or whatever, debate commissions won't invite third-party candidates, because they don't have, I think it's 5% or something like that. And it's one of the reasons why Gary Johnson, he was the Libertarian candidate in 2016, almost got 5%.
He was at like 4.6 or something, and they didn't. It was real close to that.
Because then that would have triggered federal funding. Because then that would have triggered federal election funding for the next Libertarian candidate. And so it was that close, and that would have made the 2020 election really strange.
Well, and I think that brings up a great point. And we talk about, I mean, gosh, by the end of all this election, from what I'm getting, they're on pacing to raise and spend almost $2 to $3 billion on this election.
Wow.
I know Biden was.
How much did Bloomberg spend alone?
Bloomberg just put $100 million in the coffers of Joe Biden for Florida.
For Florida,
so,
yes.
In Florida, we don't even know if we're going to know a winner on election night. The way everything's going, we may not find out till the middle of November.
Yeah, with mail-in balloting, it could be a couple of days after before you know for sure in some of these states, who won the electoral votes. Yeah, yeah.
Well, and let's talk about that. How do you take those state information? Okay, you talk about mail-in ballot, and absentee. For the record, mail-in and absentee are the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, you request an absentee ballot, you fill it out, you send it in, you get a ballot that's mailed to you. You then mail it in. Yeah. That's as simple as it gets.
Yes.
Now, you want to talk about conspiracy and fraud? I ain't going to talk about it because I haven't found any evidence that I've seen people post stuff.
And that's where some of the fake news is being generated now. It's usually generated around these side stories that sound like conspiracies, and they are. I mean, they sound like conspiracy theories, and they are theories. That's all.
And I know in the past there has been election fraud, but it has not been. It hasn't been anything to do with mail-in balloting or anything like that. It's other stuff that are smaller scales for local races.
It's the amount of election fraud that's out there, and I saw this reported once, and this was not the last election. This was, I think, maybe 2 elections ago. The amount of election fraud out there is so minimal that it's
0.0001% or something.
It doesn't. There's no way it could affect any outcome. Even
I would love anyone to send me information that there is a lawsuit or out there that people have won that's from the courts.
Well, won, yeah.
And in for example, Pennsylvania, the judge gave them a date that the Trump campaign sued, that they said there was fraud. The judge said, okay, give me information, cases, you have to give me evidence. Yeah. I do not know where that case is right now because I've not heard anything about it.
No,
I know that it was up, but is it no longer? So so how do you communicate that to the public? What would you do and get the right information out? How would you approach that to do it the right way, and what role would you play?
Well, unfortunately, you have to craft different messages for different audiences. So remember, I was talking about selection and perception. So selection of media outlets and perception of what the story is, right? So I think the best way to do that would be craft a different angle of the same story to different groups, depending on what their political leanings are. I think for anybody who feels like they're being disenfranchised or their vote isn't counting, probably the best way you do that is you keep emphasizing the safety and security of the system. But some people are just always going to be untrusting. They're not going to trust the system for one reason or another. They're set in their ways, and you can try as hard as you want to, and you will never reach them in a million years. But that said, there are others out there who just are unsure about how safe the system really is. And so it's all about trying to craft that position for them in ways that is digestible, that they can take that information. And then obviously the next thing you want is for them to be able to share that information with other people in cogent ways. I mean, and you want them to share that information with their friends and family, so that their friends and family are like, you know what? I believe Tony. Tony knows what the hell he's talking about. So
most of the time.
Yeah, well, and I can believe him, and I can believe that what he's saying is probably true. So maybe I can trust this process now.
Well, let me ask you this question. This just happened today and yesterday. President Trump is going to be having a rally in the airport on the tarmac in Toledo.
Yeah.
So, Governor DeWine, a Republican, has waived the mask requirement.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Oh, it's already been announced.
Yeah.
It's been announced from DeWine's office. What do you say when, hey, we got events that are happening here locally, and you're making us require a mask? I don't like the the two different types of reaction.
Well, I mean, it's a good example of that is the debate. We're trying to set up this debate with for the 13th with Ryan and not the 13th district. And we have to follow all of these really strange protocols and make sure everybody has masks, but that the area is sanitized. We can't have more than 50 people in this really large room.
And it's a double standard. And it's a double standard that you have the governor. It doesn't matter who you are.
But I will say this, and I think this is, if you ask anybody in DeWine's office, this would be true. If the Biden camp came to DeWine and said we want the same thing, he would give it to them. Now the Biden camp wouldn't do that. But the Biden camp wouldn't do that because they're trying to emphasize this idea that our rallies, which they're not really having rallies, but our rallies are always going to be safe and masks are always going to be required. What Trump is trying to emphasize is this idea of, which I don't necessarily agree with, is this idea of this is a First Amendment issue, and it really isn't. It's not a First Amendment issue. It's a safety and security issue.
Well, and people say it's my constitutional right to not wear a mask. Well, I like to say the normal thing is if you don't have shoes, shorts, or a shirt on, you don't get service.
No shoes, no shirt, no service.
Right. And
I like that.
I mean, and I respect the businesses. They're being held to a higher standard, and they're going to be clean, and they're going to be sterilized. And when you see these isolated cases, then you know what? It's going to protect me as much as it protects you. So then just don't go out.
So I am all about individual freedoms and liberties.
I agree.
And if you want to go to those places where they are taking you they're bringing you into their places of business, or if you're going to a Trump rally without a mask on, and they're willing to have you into their spaces, and you're willing to go into them without protection, have at it. I won't. I just, I'm going to go into Walmart with my mask on. I'm going to go into Target with my mask on. I'm going to teach my classes. For the most part, what I've been doing, I've been teaching my classes via virtual campus, which means I have some students who actually show up in the classroom, and only about out of a 15-seat, 20-seat classroom, only about 2 or 3 students actually show up, and they show up with their masks on every day, and they sanitize every day. And I'll sit all the way at the front of the room. No one's anywhere near me, and I'll turn the camera on. We'll turn on WebEx, and I'll start teaching to the other 15, 16, 17 students who are out there without my mask on. And sometimes I feel guilty doing that for the other 3 people who are in the classroom, which sounds ridiculous. But it's this idea of everybody's got a different position on these masks. It doesn't matter who you talk to, right or wrong. Everybody's got a position, and that's the beauty of the country that we live in. But unfortunately, sometimes it's also the downside too. Is that you got to be sensible about where you are, who you're with, the crowd that you're in, and how safe you are around everybody else.
Well, yeah, and that's everyday life right now. I mean, that's. And it's just getting that message, and people you have President Trump says one thing, and then you have his health experts saying another. And I think that's what gets people frustrated no matter what side of the aisle you're on.
Well, there's a communication disconnect. That message that's probably the most frustrating thing for whether you're a Republican or Democrat right now, is anything that's coming out of the White House is almost sometimes being contradicted or changed by somebody else. And so I think that's part of the challenge right now for Trump, is trying to get a more like a consistent message out there about this whole about us being safe during the pandemic.
Well, and I think that brings a great point about communication and what's happening around the country. For example, we talk about, hey, we're closing stuff down, we're opening it back up. Now we're going to have sports. We're going to have football. we just had the Big Ten vote earlier this week that they're now playing. And the very first game for Ohio State is Michigan. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. Or the team up north. But
you're not allowed to say that word? Is that what that is?
Yeah, team up north. I'm an Ohio State fan, but I don't know. But hey, it's all fun. It's all fun.
I'm trying to.
And the thing about it is we want everyone to be safe, but I think we want our sports.
Yeah. Why? I think it was Christina Brennan, and he wrote this piece. She's a sports writer for the USA Today. Wrote this piece about it's the darkest day in Ohio State sports history or something like that, right? Because I thought that every sports commentator, analyst, journalist, media person out there wanted sports back at any cost because it was costing some of them their jobs and the ability to report on anything, right? They just wanted sports back. And I think it's funny now you've got all four sports going on at the same time now, which,
for the first time in I think they said over 50 years.
Yeah. The only other time that it happens, it's weird. You'll have the combine with NFL, spring ball, I think, or no, baseball has started by then.
April 1st.
But it's really just the combine, it's the NFL. So
combine is usually the beginning of April for when the draft is usually the end of April.
Yeah, but what Brennan was saying was like, look, it's just you caved to the pressure of fans and football players and politicians and others just to play a game that doesn't mean anything.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it's a game that doesn't mean anything. And that's usually where people stop, because if you say that the game doesn't mean anything, then they're like, oh, how dare you? What do you mean it doesn't mean anything? This is the world to me. I have to have football. We have to have football. It means everything. Well, that's where the conversation stops, because there's a group of people out there for which sports means everything, and there's a group of people that could care less, that don't really understand why sports even exist anyway. And trying to find a way to get those people to come together to understand the importance of sports and why seasons like this are important is impossible. What's strange in this case is that here we have a sports journalist who wrote this story. And I was shocked that I was pleasantly surprised in a way, but shocked to see that this was coming from the USA Today.
Well, and that's the other thing is back when, the last deadly pandemic was the Spanish flu, 1917, 1918, a little bit of 19, and they played football, they played sports.
Yeah,
everyone wore a mask.
Yeah.
There's pictures, there's reports. Dr. Amy Atkin from Ohio, the Department of Health director, actually showed information from the 1918 Spanish flu on what happened and what evidence that they showed on how it affected people and everything like that. Now, people don't understand is COVID is a little bit more serious than H1N1.
Yeah.
It's more contagious.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people don't realize that. Yes, it's the flu. It's a little bit more serious of a flu. I try to protect myself, wear a mask around people because I don't want to take it to my family. I don't want to take it to my parents or anyone has an immune deficiency. You don't want that. You never want that.
Right.
And I think that we're moving now to understanding it more day by day. Now, will it all go away November 4th? We don't know.
No, I think this is going to be around for a while. But this idea too, I think it's changed. That COVID has changed a lot of not only just our everyday lifestyle, but it's also changed the way we communicate. Look at this. Here we are. We could have been doing this. You could have been like right across the table from you over here. We could have been doing this in a fancy TV studio somewhere. I like doing it this way. Don't get me wrong. But, how I was just talking about me teaching via virtual campus and WebEx. I mean, how many of us now are doing things on Zoom and WebEx and GoToMeeting and Microsoft Teams? I mean, shit you've never heard of before. Video conferencing systems you've never even considered. And now that's every day. Every day. I bet you I had, if I go back and look, I bet you I had 12 WebEx meetings on my calendar today.
Well, and that's the other thing, and I'll ask you this, and you don't have to answer the question. Are you wearing pants or shorts?
Oh, the other day I was. Yesterday I wasn't. Yesterday I had a suit. I was anchoring. I was anchoring. I had jacket and dress shirt, and I had my cutoff YSU shorts on underneath. And it was only because I was going right after that. I was going out for a walk, my daily walk. And I'm
what are you
like,
wearing now?
Huh?
Were you gonna answer it? What do you?
I got jeans.
Oh, okay. He's got nice
I'm
jeans
good.
on.
Well, and
For
I'll
the
tell
record, I got khakis on.
Now I'm in my office. But one of the reasons why is I'm in here. I'm in Bliss Hall at, what is this now? Almost 8:00 at night. And this is when our amazing, wonderfully talented cleaning crew. God bless these people. Why they want to come in here and clean up our mess after this every day for the amount of money that they probably make doing it. God bless them. But
Yeah,
I would have anchored, but I thought, well, I'm walking into Bliss Hall. I'm sure no one else is going to be there. And then I heard drummers upstairs, right. The percussion.
You'll hear them all hours of the night.
Percussion's right above me here. But I thought, well, I better at least put jeans on. So no, I'm not. But you know what I mean? You know what the term anchoring means, right?
Entice the audience.
Okay, so anchoring was the term that the male TV news anchors in the 70s and 80s used when they would come out. They would they would only be filmed, obviously, from the desk up, so from the waist up. So they really only had to have jackets and dress shirts on, and they wore sometimes nothing from the waist down. And even if they had female anchors beside them, they would wear boxer shorts out or whatever. I asked Steve Vesey and
from
Stan
Channel
Boney.
21.
Yeah, did you do your Stan Boney interview? You're interviewing Stan Boney at some point too, right?
Yeah, we'll be working with him and talking about the history over in the coming month. We're going to sit down and have a great chat with him and how times have changed.
Well, ask him about anchoring.
I will do that.
He has an answer. That's a good answer. He knows. I don't want to spoil it, but ask him about it.
No, let's not spoil it. We'll tease people. We'll say that he's going to answer it. We hope.
I bet you he will. He's a good guy.
Yeah, Stan is a great guy. I just got the information this afternoon that we're working on a date sometime in October. We're trying to get him in and to really because what people don't understand is we do these virtual.
Yeah.
And we hope in the fall I'll start going to locations, all safe to distance, and we'll be working with the individuals and where we go and how we set it up to make sure we're socially distanced and everything like that. But I think that this is always a funner way because it's a laid back anywhere now. Because now, when you go to these web meetings or you go to these WebExes or Zoom meetings and everyone's working from home, you never know what's going to fly in front of you. A cat, an animal, your kids.
Yeah. Actually, just had that happen yesterday. It scared the crap out of me. Dr. Shelley Blundell, we had a meeting with her and she was at home in Canton. And up behind her popped, she's got a hairless cat. You ever see one of those?
I forget what the name of those are. Yeah, I forget the name.
It was creepy as hell. And I'm like, ugh. She goes, yeah, sorry, it happens from time to time. He just kind of pops in there and pops back out. And I'm like, oh.
Well, and I think that's another, we've been talking all about communication. And this is almost another frame of communication in person.
Yeah.
And if you can do this, there's nothing wrong with doing it in person.
Yeah.
And I think that people need to understand that, I mean, I've been home since March.
Well, the
I mean,
technology's gotten a lot better too. So let's make sure we understand that. I mean, we could not. I don't know that I would actually trust doing this maybe 5 years ago. But
yeah,
the
that's a good point.
speed has gotten better. Latency has gotten a lot better. Um, access has gotten a hell of a lot better. We still have a huge digital divide in our country, in our world. I
Hmm.
mean, I was talking today about how we've got 1.4 billion people in China, um, and 144 million of them have access to a streaming service, right? So that leaves 1.25 billion people in China who don't have. I mean, I guess my point to that is many people are in poverty around the
Hmm.
world and don't have access to this technology. We're fortunate enough to have it, but even in our own country, there's a divide. So access is an issue. Access, but it's gotten better. It's gotten better. In fact, our government, our state and federal government had, with CARES Act money and all that kind of stuff, have tried to dump money into our school systems so that students could have technology and hotspots at home if they were going to be fully online students this school year. So the access and all the kind of things have gotten better. So that has made this possible. That has what you and I are doing. That has made Zoom and WebEx and these other platforms possible. Where I would think maybe like 3, 4, 5 years ago, we wouldn't have been doing as much of this.
Well, and I think that there's going to be there's probably a lot of technology that's changed over the last 6 months that would have never changed that fast,
Yeah.
especially in communication.
Oh yeah.
So where do you think we go now in communication as well as just in general?
Well, I think I want to kind of go back to what I just said about the divide. I think it's trying to close up that divide. I think trying to get people who don't have access to technologies that they need to advance themselves in this world, to be better educated, to be better informed, to find their way around fake news, to get to legitimate news, to get to facts. That's where we need to go next, and that means obviously creating more communication channels, creating more outlets for people to have conversations like this. I think that's probably where we're going next. The other thing too, and I'm really excited to see where we go with Starlink and SpaceX's I don't know if it's going to be high speed internet or what they're going to call it, but their ability to get internet access, to get I don't know if it's going to be 3G, 4G speed or whatever to the rest of the world. That's going to be cool to see. But again, this idea of trying to get technology in the hands of people who maybe have never had it before, trying to get avenues for people to communicate that they didn't exist before, to connect corners of the world that have never even spoken to each other or didn't know that each other even existed. I mean, that's the cool stuff. And that's big brain stuff. That's stuff that's way beyond me. But that's the kind of cool stuff that I'd love to see happen.
Well, and there will be a lot coming down the route, I should just, I can't even speak right now. Coming down the road.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we'll be seeing that. And Youngstown Press Club, thank you for joining us, as well as everyone else. If Biden wins, will he tweet like Trump? That's a good little statement.
Yeah. I think that might be more of a rhetorical question than I don't know.
Yeah, it all depends on what kind of rhetorical question.
Can I ask you a question?
You're more than welcome to.
What's the score tonight? What's going to be the score tonight? What's the outcome?
Score? I'm gonna say 24-10 Browns.
Nice.
21 or 24-10. Our offense finally gets moving.
Because the Bengals didn't win either, right?
No, they lost. They could have won.
So, oh, that's right. They lost that's right. Wow.
They could have won. They could have been 1-0 too, but I'm going to say, like I said, 21 or 24-10, Browns over the Bengals. And that's why I don't play any of that fantasy because I know I'd lose.
You know,
I'd be the guy that I'd get the guy I'd pick guys that I'm like behind the scenes, like, come on, man, just give me that third string running back's going to come up and wipe the floor with everyone.
You know, I had a friend who always picked the kicker first because he would, if he was picking like a 9th or 10th, he would always pick a kicker first because he's like, well, I know kicker's always going to get me points. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever.
Well, it depends.
He always lost.
like New England's kicker. Oh, gosh, he'll hit from everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it just depends who the kicker is. That you know that, hey, I'm on the 40-yard line. Okay, kicker's going in. Bill Belichick sends him in.
Well, it drives my friends crazy, guys that I went to school with and other Steelers fans. Drives them crazy whenever I say I obviously Steelers are my favorite team, but I have other favorite teams like
we're going to have to change that.
The Browns, the Bengals, and the Ravens. They're my favorite teams.
Well, but I mean that I got to find a way to get into your office and get rid of that towel.
Yeah, I have other goodies. I have
if you don't have a Browns, don't show it to me.
No, I got my Steelers. Here's a Steelers stapler. Look at that.
Geez. You've shopped at the Steelers store too much.
And look, wait, like this is a I don't know if it's a Steelers tape dispenser. Look at that. Look at that.
Oh boy. No. Adam, I appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule tonight. My pleasure, man. This was fun. Yeah, it was. It was a good time. Like I said, I'm going to say Browns 21-10, 24-21-10. I like that. Adam, thank you for if you want to stay on after this, but thank you for always taking your time out of your busy schedule. You're always welcome on my podcast, and we hope you and wish you the best of luck. And thank you for everyone joining us today. Check out other podcast interviews and videos at anthonyvspano.com. Be safe and God bless. Thank you, everyone.